All right. Hello. Welcome to Perspectives with Black Men. We're excited to have you all here today. Thank you very much for joining us. We're really excited about the topic in which we're going to be discussing today. I think it's very important topic, and it's one that a lot of people have definitely wanted to discuss. It's definitely a topic that I think many people want to know about. So I'll give you time to share this on your page while we get some more people to join us. And definitely we're going to go ahead and start our introductions now. So again, I am Dr. NJ Akbar. I am your host, and I'm really excited to have on our guest today. We're going to start off with Tyrell Boydston. Tyrell is from Detroit, Michigan. He currently works with 7 through 17-year-old in a school-based therapy program. It's he works for a nonprofit, and Tyrell and I went to college together. So that would probably be the last time I call him Tyrell. So welcome to the show, Ty.
Thank you very much. Like Nadir said, my name is Tyrell Boydston. I received both my bachelor's in psychology and my master's of social work from EMU, Eastern Michigan University. I have been working for going on 4 years now in mental health with children. I started off on a at the home-based level of care, and I am now working at the school-based level, which is sort of a hybrid between the outpatient level and the home-based level.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Welcome, Ty. We'll get into more conversations with you as we go on. And so next we have the newly minted Dr. Anthony Ferguson, a good friend of mine, a fraternity brother, who just received his doctorate in May, I think, or April, one of the two.
That's correct.
I'm not really, so I'm like, I can't remember which month. But either way, we're so proud of this brother. And he really did his thing. And so we're proud of him. He has been in the mental health field for a little while now. And so he currently works in victim services, doing training and development, as well as working for mental health with abuse. And so, and Dr. Ferguson is from Baltimore, Maryland. I won't tell you the joke I was going to say earlier. I want to share that with everybody, but it's just really, I'm really glad to have you on. So, Dr. Ferguson.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, Dr. Akbar. Again, Dr. Anthony Ferguson, originally from Baltimore, Maryland. My bachelor's degree is in African American Studies, and I have a degree in history, as well as a certificate in critical cultural competency. I received my master's degree in clinical mental health counseling from Drake University in Des Moines, Iowa. And that's also where I received my doctorate degree in educational leadership. So a lot of my research is focused around mental health and the mental health of faculty, staff, and Black students at predominantly white institutions. And I've worked for several years as a mental health therapist and a substance abuse therapist. So it's great to be here with you all.
All right. Thank you very much. Last but not least, we have Caleb. Caleb Boswell is from Detroit as well, and he currently works with both traditional and non-traditional aged college students. And he is a jack of all trades. He's an academic, a career, and mental health counselor, and he does a little bit of everything. And he actually is the host of his own online web series with a mutual friend of ours. So if you want to tell people about that a little bit, as well as just a little bit more about yourself.
All right. So my name is Caleb Boswell. I'm a student advisor at a local community college. As Akbar said, we are a little bit different than your traditional four-year, where there may be academic advising, transfer, mental health services, all those things. I'm able to kind of tap in and handle all those things, one-stop shop with the students who I see. I say that I kind of toe the line between both worlds, between higher ed and mental health. And then, as he mentioned, this summer, a good friend of ours, myself and Charlie Page, we have an online platform called The Healing Collective, where we interview different guest therapists every week, and we talk about a different topic every week during the intersection of COVID during this time.
Wow, thank you very much. As you know, I'm a big fan of your show, and I usually watch faithfully, or if I can't watch it, I go back and rewatch it. So you might see some of my comments after the fact. But I think mental health is very important. As a person who grew up not really thinking that mental health, well-being and wellness was something that we definitely needed to attend to consistently. I believed in some of the myths. I believed that we should not seek out counseling often, and that it might have made you look a little crazy or otherwise. And so I really have come to shift my thinking in that way, in the different things that has happened in my life. So I just want to thank each and every one of you for coming. Again, the reason why I started this show was to have conversations around getting more perspectives of Black men out there, so to change the narrative about who Black men are in our society, but also to talk about some of the systemic problems that exist. And one of the things that we need more of, I believe, is mental health conversations and discussions and services. And so I asked the three of you, three mental health professionals that I know who are Black men, that come on and have some conversation with us. So if you could all just talk with us about what made you go into the mental health field, knowing all the things that you might have heard growing up about mental health. And we'll start with Ty.
I think that it's kind of a different question for me. And I say that because I'm not someone who really came up in my upbringing with much to be said or much to be heard about what other people thought about mental health or mental health services. It wasn't necessarily a common overlap in my life and my upbringing. The adults weren't talking about it, despite the untreated and hand-me-down type of trauma that existed within my family. So kind of what brought me into the field of social work was more so a reaction. Somehow along the way in my upbringing, despite some of the similar experiences of my predecessors, of my younger elders, even siblings, I was able to kind of experience just a pinch of the amount of privilege that it takes to kind of switch course in a way, or to change trajectory. So I give credit to the fact that because of having certain elders, and I give a lot of credit to my youngest uncle for this, kind of being ahead of this wave that of a journey that I was living, growing up within my family, and how kind of the trauma echoes of racism impacted my family on a indirect and direct level. And so he was kind of ahead of the curve, really, able to kind of usher me in a way to stay the course and avoid some of the avenues that are awaiting us as we emerge, especially into adolescence and such. But I chose mental health out of reaction to my ability to persevere in a way that others could have very similar experiences, yet the outcomes were not necessarily the same because of different factors, different recipes, so to speak, at play. So I got into mental health to reach back to children primarily, people in general, but primarily children who had a present similar to a past like mine. To be more so, and it sounds a little cliche, but more so a living example, living proof that yeah, you can have those experiences and still thrive. You can do more than survive as an adult. And like meeting me is the beginning of this is how I'm going to show you how. We're going to talk about how to navigate these traps that are set for us intentionally and unintentionally. So that's kind of what my general drive for choosing mental health.
You know, for me, my journey to existing in this career field really started from the very beginning. Like Ty mentioned, there wasn't a lot of people in my neighborhood that talked about mental health, that talked about the signs of what poor mental health looked like. But I like to think that from the very beginning, God was ordering my steps and sort of leading me down this path through my own life's experience. So, you know, I think back to having two parents who struggled with substance abuse and how that sort of navigated and pulled me into the direction of doing substance abuse work and having that empathy to work with those clients. I think about, you know, at the age of 18, finding my mom's sister who had overdosed and passed away from drug and alcohol abuse, right? So from a very young age, sort of trauma is I think God's way of saying, hey, I'm going to take you through this so that I can use you to then turn around and be a vessel and be a counselor and be someone that can also be there for others. Life in Baltimore for a lot of us wasn't easy. I remember failing the 4th grade and the 6th grade and just really struggling in school, and folks not really being able to say, hey, this is the cause. This is why you're struggling in school. It's, you know, they'll put all the labels on you. They'll false diagnose. A lot of our kids were put on, a lot of my friends actually were put on medication at the time. And I just remember my family coming up to the school and saying, no, he does not need medication. He may act like this here. And again, not really understanding the cause of my behavior, some of my outbursts, I guess, but knowing that medication, and I thank God that they were, you know, privy enough and knowledgeable enough to know that that's just not it. And maybe it was just the gut feeling of, hey, that's not it. We don't want our son, our kid to be on medication. So I thank them for that foresight and knowing that. I was privileged enough by the grace of God to have athletic abilities that allowed me to then go to a high school that was not in the cards originally, was not in the cards. Like I mentioned, I struggled academically. So athletics sort of opened the door for high school and also for college for me. But I got there and I was surrounded by people who talked about mental health. I was surrounded by counselors. I was surrounded by people who were there to help. But for me, I didn't know how to ask for the help. So I found myself in this particular situation of being this big, strong athlete. You know, I'd like to think of myself as a superstar at that time, but trying to confront the traumas of my childhood with sort of this newfound identity. And again, I just kept running up against this brick wall, for lack of a better term. And I found myself in tears one day at practice. And I remember my coach coming up to me and he's like, what is it? You have this thing where you just cut people off. What are you going through? And in that moment, I was able to reveal trauma that, that I hadn't expressed to anyone. And that was my first introduction that afternoon to a counselor. So that's sort of the journey. Again, my life has sort of led me back. I got to a place where I thought, hey, you're okay. You don't need to do this anymore. And then college hit, more struggle, more trauma appeared. And I was like, I gotta get back. I gotta see someone. And every counselor that I had was, I always left those sessions feeling 100 times better. So then after graduating from the University of Iowa, it became, well, how do I do this? How do I become this for someone else? And that's sort of what led me on this journey.
So I would say for myself, I've kind of known since high school that I wanted to be a therapist. I just didn't know what that looked like. And so I think I had the glorified version of, someone sitting on the couch and having a session and that's what it would look like, and money, and I'm helping people. And so I thoroughly had that glorified version of it. And so when I went off to undergrad, my undergrad is in psychology and communications. I realized, when I started freshman year, you couldn't tell me I wasn't going to be a psych major. I wasn't going to go on and do clinical mental health and do, a PhD in that program. But as I progressed through my program, I realized I didn't like all of psychology. I only liked the people aspect of it. I didn't care about Skinner boxes. I didn't care about learning in memory. I pushed through those classes, but it really wasn't my thing. And so, again, trying to figure out what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to do something mental health. I knew I wanted to do something working with young people. But like I said, after being an undergrad and realizing that the psychology path wasn't necessarily the route for me, I was just trying to figure that out. And I think what did it for me is that my work working with Upper Bound and doing trio work. That was my first real job. That was my first introduction to the experience. And I was able to get around some people and be mentored by people. And that's how I found out, you can go get a master's in counseling and still be a therapist and still do these things. And so I recognize, working with young people and working in the high schools for the first half of my career, I really tried to be for my students what I didn't have. In my case, I'm a first generation college student, raised by my great grandmother, but also with huge assistance from my aunts and still having a positive relationship with my mom. I always joke and say I'm a group project. But going off, to undergrad, I simply didn't know. And I missed out on a lot of money and I missed out on a lot of opportunities, not because I was lazy, not because I wasn't a good student. I was a great student in high school. But there was still just a lot of stuff that I didn't know. And so once I got into that role, working for Upper Bound, I really tried to be that person for them that wasn't there for me. So letting them know, if you are adopted, there's funding here. If you do have the situation, you can go here for this funding. If you're not sure about college or you're not sure about, what you want to do. One of the craziest things I remember just starting off my career is I would have to do these things called academic advising meetings, where each semester I would sit down with the participants in the program and we'll look over their grades and talk about, what they want to do education-wise. And I can't tell you how many times I sat down with my juniors and seniors. And for a lot of them, that was the first real conversation that somebody had with them in regards to what do you really want to do? Not just graduate high school, not just, walk across that stage, but somebody really taking a genuine interest in regards to what they want to do and what their plans are. And not saying that this is stupid or not saying that you need to do something else because it's more practical, but to genuinely have somebody going, oh, okay, that's dope. That's what you want to do. All right, well then this is the plan that we can kind of make that happen. And so then I went on to EMU to get my master's in counseling. And so I've spent this half of my career, where I spent the first half of my career helping students get to college. This time I help students matriculate through. And I always tell people all the time, what shows up on my screen and what shows up at my desk can be two different things. On my screen, it may be an issue with the bio class, or, my instructor is tripping. But what's really going on is, and these are some real examples, I had a student who was schizophrenic, who didn't have, for whatever reason, access to something, he had an issue with his insurance. And because he had an issue with his insurance, wasn't having his meds. And so that was a real cat and mouse session, because he saw I'm asking particular questions. He knows if he answers a particular way, some potential things could happen. But just really, I'm just a helper naturally. And even when I think, or even when I try to find something else, because in the spirit of being honest, I've had doubts, and I've had doubts in my ability, and I've thought about doing something else. I can't even see it. I've left for a check before, and I came right back because the check and the title wasn't worth it. So I'm thankful, and I feel like I'm working my purpose.
Thank you very much, everyone, for sharing why you went into this field, very important field, and especially knowing that Black men, there's not a lot of you in the field. And so I just want to thank you myself for just being in the field and at least having some representation of Black men in what is a very critical field and aspect of life, our mental wellness. And so thinking about mental wellness, I wanted to ask each of you if you wouldn't mind sharing your experiences with counseling, and thinking back to the first time you went to counseling, like what was some of the reasons why you went? As comfortable, share as comfortable as you are comfortable, I should say. Share as much as you're comfortable with. We're going to start with Ty.
I would say, for me, it was more so I had arrived at a point of really further uncharted territory in my journey of becoming who I am from where I came from. So I was the first in my household to even go to college, to graduate from college, and to go beyond and go back a second time for a graduate degree. So I'm already years into uncharted territory, to where that sense of expected or typical or storybook type of ushering and guidance you get from your loved ones at home, it just simply wasn't a thing that existed, because this is a first. And so nobody has come down this way to show you where to go, right? And so on the heels of college, really was, along with the journey that it was, and kind of making me and kind of being the transition from child to man that it was also a distraction from what I left from in high school. And what I left from in high school was more so, by the time I got to high school, or by the time I left high school, was more of a mental thing. It was really, in hindsight, the beginning of, or maybe half of a decade into, a sense of persisting but mild depression. And so I kind of carried that with me without a label, without a way to really talk about it. And then college became a distraction. It became a new world from me. Because despite some of the toxicity that I kind of was raised under, I like to use the metaphor, I was raised by wolves in a way. But I was able to be distracted from that and kind of emerge in a more free form, to become myself, to try out, just having different peer groups at my disposal, was a new world for me. So with that being said, after college was all the way over, and I'm including grad school with this as well, I started to embark on new endeavors, new milestones in life. I was moving out of Ypsilanti for the first time after at least 15 years of living there. Coming back to the Metro Detroit area before actually landing back in Detroit. And so I have a new home on the table. I also have a new career in a new field at a new agency with new levels of responsibility. I'm acquiring new things as I'm emerging further into adulthood. And it all hit me like, I don't know, like a brick wall. It was more so, it triggered a sense of, it was a reminder that these new accolades, these new achievements, these new endeavors that I'm embarking on, without my life partner, I'm having to yet again journey this alone as far as what I thought was typical of other of my peers and such who had the family who would rally you on and be in your corner and support you on. So that sense of loneliness, not having guidance in the avenue of career, in the avenue of home ownership, or that transition into home ownership, and the other levels of responsibility that come with the lifestyle. It was a lot for me to kind of deal with, and it fed on my imposter syndrome of being a person who comes from a past where you're not really supposed, the traps that are set for you, the way capitalism works against you, the way education works against you. I come from a past where you're not really supposed to arrive here. So once you arrive here with your baggage that you have to come with, people don't quite know what to do with you there. And so while I present very, well kept on the surface, the internal battle becomes stronger when the struggle itself is unbelievable. And so I say all that to say it all came crashing down. And once the distraction of college was out of the picture, I had to come head on with what I thought I had escaped. And so I had to deal with the unhealed wounds of what made me who I am and what is the foundation of all of my fear-based decision making. I had to deal with that, and I had to unpack that in a way that I could maintain the level of functionality that was needed to be who I am instead of kind of buckling under that pressure. And so it'll be this September, 4 years into me having my own therapist. I think that without my story, a therapist would be needed because of the field that I'm in. The fact that other people are downloading their stories onto me, I have to have a release for that. So it just so happens that I have my own story that needs releasing as well. And when you don't release that story, you still tell it non-verbally through behavior, and normally in a problematic way.
Yeah, so for me, my experience with counseling, I initially I thought it started in 2008 when I saw my first counselor, but I remember back as early as middle school, and the counselors that we had there, while I never saw them, I remember yearning to want to talk to them. And I remember they would always have certain students that would have the opportunity to go into their office, and part of it was they got to skip class, but they also had a chance to just talk. I mean, it was a very dim lit room with a light. I just remember always asking, what are you guys doing there? What's happening in there? It's like, well, they just talk to me. They get to talk to me about what's going on. And I was like, well, I'd like to come. And she's like, well, you don't need this, right? So, and I almost forgot that until Ty was speaking earlier, and that hit me, right? So I guess that was my very first interaction. with a counselor or someone that was there to actually provide counseling. But it wasn't until about 2008, 2009, about 2008, 2009 that I had the opportunity to see a counselor for myself. And like I mentioned earlier, I remember being on this football field with my team, and just broke down, just started crying, and had coaches come up to me and just checking on me, hey, what's going on? And it was there that I had finally admitted to someone outside of my own mind that I had been molested. And I thank God for those particular men that were there, that were able to come and wrap their arms around me and did not leave it there. Practice ended that day for everyone. I walked off with men who were saying, I love you, I care about you. And again, wanted to take it a step further, right? How do we help you get the help that you need in all of this? So I remember them being there when I told my family. I remember them not only taking me to a counselor, but also paying for my counselor. And that initial experience, while I think it was challenging in some aspects, it was very helpful. It was beneficial to be able to share. And again, everything didn't come out, but she also gave me something that I give to others. And she described counseling as being this onion, and us being this onion that you have to peel back the layers, and you get to a point where you're like, I'm good. I'm okay right here. I'm okay with what I've peeled off. And that's sort of where I was when I graduated high school, and I entered again the University of Iowa, playing Division I athletics. And I thought, you know what, I'm fine. Things are rough here, but I'm fine. And I remember, and I remember how we had a counselor come in from the counseling center, and it was, in Division I athletics, it's sort of, we're just going to show these people to you, but you're not going to really use them, right? But we have to show you these people. And I remember her coming by, and they were like, she's going to talk for about 15, 20 minutes. She probably talked for about 3 minutes. And then they were bringing the next person in. And I had to make up an excuse to actually leave the session. Just had to go to the restroom just to get her card. And I remember getting her card and just like holding on to it tight, like not wanting anyone to see that I had it. Just kind of that eerie feeling, still having already, I had already seen a therapist before, but at that level, I didn't sort of want to reveal that. Things got to sort of a boil. Things came to a boil with athletics, and I decided to actually utilize that contact. And from that point on, it's sort of been off and on with counseling, getting to a place where, hey, I feel good, I'm comfortable. And then, every few months or every few years, it's like, hey, I need to check in with someone. Full transparency, the place where I got sort of worried the most is after actually completing my program and entering into the field. And that became daunting to go back to a counselor, because it's sort of like I had seen what was behind the curtain. I think for what it's worth, I went through a pretty good program, but still there's no way that a 2-year program or 3-year program can actually prepare you for some of the stories and some of the testimonies that you'll be brought. So I was sort of disillusioned with the whole idea of, now I have to go see someone that went through a program like this. For me, I needed someone that had, some experience. So finding a counselor of color in the middle of Iowa has been challenging. But COVID-19 has definitely presented telemental health and other avenues to really serve folks of color and anyone who really needs. You really have the opportunity to find the counselor of your choice. So for me, counseling has always been very therapeutic. It's always been a way for me to release and feel a whole lot better. So I recommend it. It's something that I love doing. But yeah, that's my experience with counseling.
All right, so my experience with counseling. I definitely should have probably went earlier. I definitely should have probably went earlier in my life. But I would say that where the wheel or where the ball got rolling in my adult life and going professionally is that I was working full time. I was a caretaker to my grandmother, and I was a graduate student. And so balancing all that, at one point, I just felt like I reached a point where I wasn't managing it well. The crazy thing is I went to a counselor and it wasn't a good positive experience that first time. Even though I was a graduate student, even though I was, working on becoming in the profession, that first experience wasn't a good experience and I didn't go back. And just kept pushing through and pushing through and pushing through. And eventually my grandmother ended up passing. Eventually I ended up graduating. But I was still in a space that, why am I not okay? And so I went and have been going in waves pretty consistently since 2015. I think the thing that's been best about it, though, is that it's made me a better counselor on the other end, because I know what it's like to struggle, to be vulnerable. I know what it's like to sit on the other end of that couch and to second guess and go, do I say that? Do I open that can? I know what it's like to, even though I know my therapist isn't judging me, I still know what it's like to sit on that other side of the couch and go, man, what is she gonna think after I say, X, Y, Z? And because I've had those experiences, I've been genuine when other people are sitting across from me and I see them having those struggles. I jokingly call it, playing double dutch. When I can visibly see somebody going, should I say this? Should I not say this? You know what I'm saying? And I speak my piece and I speak my experience to let them know that I'm not I'm not on some pedestal, because I'm on the other side of the table and I'm this therapist. Like, yo, I'm just as human and I struggle just as much as you do. And this is what my experience has been like. If you're not willing to share now, totally get it. I understand. But just know that when you're ready, the door is open, and we can take that walk whenever you're ready. But I think being able to come from that genuine place has made me more empathetic. Again, like I say, to the people who are across from me. But I think it also, like I said, I think it also helps build rapport. Because again, I take myself off that pedestal. I take myself off that power struggle of up there and you're down here, and just try to level it off and let it know, I'm a person just like you, and some of the same struggles that I recognize or that I'm, may think that I'm seeing, I've gone through those, as well.
Yes, thank you for sharing. Someone just wrote authenticity is everything. I know that in my counseling experiences, I think I had a similar experience as you did, Caleb. My first time that I went, I did not like it, and I swore it off. I said, I'm never going back again. Um, so that's almost exactly how it was. And going back and finding the right counselor was really, really like life-changing almost, because eye-opening. You were able to see things that other people were able to see, but you just weren't able to see about yourself. Things, open your eyes to accepting things that you may not have either wanted to accept or you couldn't hear. So I really appreciate you sharing that, because I think that's important whenever you're thinking about mental health, as well as going to get help for yourself. That it's like a doctor's office in some ways too. Like sometimes the first doctor you go to don't believe that there's anything wrong with you. And so you have to go find you another doctor who will listen to you and actually do something about it, right? So mental health counselors are the same thing. Not everyone's created equally. I've never had a Black counselor, actually. So that is something that the three of you represent. Now, obviously, I couldn't go to any of you because I know you all too well. But you know, it would be nice to have a Black male counselor. So I will say that that's something that you represent. And so when we're thinking about what's going on today in the world and mostly in this country, and we know there's a lot of protests and uprisings, and people really wanting to see more happen in society. With that, I'm wondering, you know, what are your thoughts as mental health professionals about the effects of racism um, on Black men specifically that you've noticed through your counseling work? Ty?
The effects of racism, they're kind of, it's hard to really, it's almost abstract in a way because it's so much of a spectrum in which it's experienced, identified, perceived. And so with my population that I work with professionally, the children, one of the first things that I've noticed in terms of race, just in the school that I work in, is disposition or demeanor, that child adult relationship in the power dynamic, in the perceived power dynamic that's just kind of threaded into the operation of the school. The fact that when it didn't take long, it didn't take a full week when I first got to the school that I worked in, it immediately reminded me of the experiment we all learn about in undergrad, if you've ever taken a psychology class, the prison experiment. Where you have the subjects as the guards, other half as prisoners, and they just let the tape roll, and everyone assumed that role, the hostility of a prison guard, and the submissiveness and abuse taken as a prisoner. It almost feels like training. It almost feels like, and depending on the teacher, of course, but I want to generalize it and say the overall culture of a majority of middle-aged white women and African-American children. The power dynamics that you hear it just in the delivery of given directives or verbal reprimand and such. The marching down the hallway feels very prison-like in that regard. The hunger for power and control, as opposed to understanding and not feeling the fire of tension between student and adult. And so that's kind of the racism that I've seen, the lack of value, the lack of voice given. A lot of it, it's just a microcosm of what, of the variation in plight that Black people speak to historically. That's what stands out to me, the lack of value, the lack of power, the lack of being heard. The overall message of unimportance. That's kind of the racism that the people that I'm working with are experiencing in a way that they can't quite put into words, but they know something is off here. They don't quite have all the information to really categorize what's at play, but they know that they experience one thing from people who look like them and another thing from people who don't. And so me having to bridge that gap and provide some background information, it becomes my experience with racism, to the effect of now I have a decision to make with whether or not where I'm going to position myself behind enemy lines, potentially, because I'm not an employee of the school, I'm just stationed there. because I'm not a middle-aged white woman, but I'm planted here. And so being strategic, hearing both sides, of course. But yeah, I mean, just to answer the question without further rambling on, it's interaction is what I'm seeing. Interaction and the position of the powerless.
Yeah, all of that, man, all of that. I think that, you know, racism plays every part. It's a part of all of our lives, and this country is hurting, and it's been hurting for a very long time due to racism, systemic racism, and the ramifications of racism, discrimination, and microaggressions. Right? I don't want to discount any of that. You know, there's no secret that 20% of all Black and African Americans report, you know, higher cases of psychological distress. Right? When we start thinking of Black people, Black communities existing below the poverty line, over 3 times more likely to report psychological distress than their white counterparts. Right? And then you throw on top of that racism. Right? And not just racism in this, you know, this fantasy, you know, thinking that we, you know, in the olden days, but real life racism, real life lynchings of Black men, of Black people, the gunning down of unarmed Black and brown people that look like us, that feel like us, that live with us. Right? That's not something where you got to get on YouTube or go to the History Channel to see that stuff. That is happening today in real time, in real life, and that has, again, important and significant impacts on our community and honestly on our mental health and our well-being. So racism plays a huge role in that, and it's something that we all have to do a better job at addressing head on and calling it exactly what it is. Right? There are people who are rioting in the streets. There are people that are looting. You know, it's coming from all angles. Right? This is the, as Dr. King said, the language of the unheard. Right? And like I said, we're hurting. The system is broken, and there are people who are responding to that. Right? And because of mental health and the lack thereof, people are responding in various ways. And in my position, I can't condemn them until we find a solution. Right? There are things that are happening in our country right now that honestly needs to happen. So we can all wake up. So we all can all come together and say, how do we begin to address this? Because we've ignored it for too long. We've swept racism and discrimination and microaggressions and folks being treated unfairly under the rug, and we have to face that. We have to face what's that coming to. So racism, you know, I see it in clients. I see it just in the grocery store. You know, I see it in my everyday interactions with folks. It's important, and I know this wasn't a part of it, but just thinking part of the question. But there are several ways to ignore that. There's not ignore it. Excuse me. There are several ways to sort of mitigate the strain that's placed on us when it comes to race and when it comes to being a Black person in this country that has to deal with race every day. All right. I have not watched George Floyd's video. I don't plan on watching it. That's to protect my own mental health. Sometimes you have to turn off the TV. You know, you don't have to participate in every march. Right. So again, and you don't have to explain to white people and white folks what's going on in the Black community. Right. My favorite line by far has been Google it. Right. All of the information is out there. I don't have the energy to explain it, but you can find it. It's readily available. So again, racism is a part of our everyday lives, and it takes different tolls on our mental health. So everyone who's watching or who will see this, please do what you feel is necessary to protect your peace and your mental health and wellness.
So I definitely agree with the other two brothers in regards to what they had to say. I think the thing that stands out for me is that working in higher ed is that it's a spectrum, and you have one part of the population where the systemic racism and the blatant racism and the microaggressions and implicit bias, that is their day-to-day struggle. It is just how they live their lives. And then you have another portion of the population that's just like, yo, are we starting like normal this fall? Like it's just not part of their world. They don't have to tune into it. They have the ability to say, you know, I'm tired of seeing this, or I'm tired of having this conversation. Where there's a whole nother population at the school where they're tired of seeing it too, and they're tired of having the population, but I'm sorry, they're tired of having the conversation, but they don't have the ability or the privilege to turn it off. And so that's definitely something that I see in my work and that I worry about, you know, in regards to this experience. You know, one of the things that you see across the different therapy groups and within conversations is, you know, people throw around the term OPTSD. You hear one thing, people throw it in their vocab, toxicity and so on and so forth. But in all seriousness, though, in regards to the definition of post-traumatic stress disorder, there is a real worry of implications of that individuals may really suffer from some of those symptoms in regards to, you know what I'm saying, constantly seeing death come across their screen, dealing with those types of issues. So that is a real worry moving forward, because we're in a time where these aren't stories in a history book. These things are happening time and time and time again in front of us and before our eyes.
Yes, it definitely is. And thank you, each of you, for sharing. We actually have quite a few questions in the Facebook Live group. So I want to ask you, I know we had other questions we talked about, but I just want to ask you this one question before we get to their question. So this is the last question. Keep the questions going out there. Who's watching, we're going to get to them right away. So when you think about the progression of this country, what role do you feel, in as succinctly as possible, what role do you feel mental health plays in the progression of this country?
I honestly think that mental health is the X factor. I think that it's going to be what's necessary to get over this kind of treadmill of a hump we seem to find ourselves in when we repeat this cycle, where we're at, especially in terms of police brutality and the sensationalization of it through every stream of media we have at our access. But it's behaviors that, and I don't want to speak for the whole Black community, but if you know, we have these type of personality or these behaviors that we categorize as personality traits, where we even convince other people to walk on eggshells in regard to interacting with people. Oh, watch out for so-and-so because, you know, they're liable to do this and do that. Oh, excuse them, that's just how they are. And so we're providing this narrative to behaviors, mislabeling them as personality traits when they're really symptoms. And so we have to address our own healing. And so in order for us to even get to the point where we can move forward in a healthy way, in a more unified way, we can kind of break down some of these barriers as black people, as far as this romanticized unification that we talk about when we make reference to the past movements and such. we can finally get that unification if we work on our healing and allow each other to get closer to each other without worrying about being bitten by each other. And so I think that we all need to heal from the trauma echoes of racism that run parallel with this daily experience that we're continuing to have. And so what I mean by that is we have trauma that we undergo from our upbringing that started generations before us. And the only reason why we receive such trauma, whether it's a form of abuse, physically, sexually, verbally, it's learned behavior from people before us. And so if we can start our own healing from trauma that is blended with learned behavior, we can better position ourselves to be a part of the larger fight. We can stop having our own internal battles. We can then become a part of the larger battle instead of a room full of opposing opinions about how we're going to get free or how we're going to be liberated. So I think mental health is the X factor. We need to patch up wounds so that we can move forward.
I think that was beautifully said, so I won't add too much more. I think, I think that, like I tell all of my clients, I don't think there's been one that I haven't said this to, and something I say to myself quite often, but you can't fill anybody else's cup unless yours is full, excuse me. And so until we start doing that, taking care of each other and ourselves and truly addressing our mental health issues, it's going to be hard to fight anything else. We're still going to see school shootings on the rise, the prison industrial complex with Black men in particular being overrepresented in that, I think at least by 60%. We're there, hospitals, homelessness. Again, all of that is going to come back to mental health. Education, when we talk about underperforming in the achievement gap, and racism is a major part of that. A lot of that is also mental health and poor mental health as well. So until we're able to do that, until we're able to confront the internal struggle, and we find that oftentimes hard to talk about, but until we are able to, in a realistic way, address that and start putting money and funds towards better mental health and producing more counselors and more counselors of color, we're still going to see all the stuff that I mentioned previously, and I don't think we're going to get very far without taking care of the inside first.
Again, so to not reinvent the wheel, one of the perspectives that I want to come from in regards to, because the question is, what is the role of mental health in the progression of our country? I think one of the things is that it needs to stop being weaponized and scapegoated for convenience. And so what do I mean by that is that, let's just call a spade a spade. When you have a situation and you have a white person who goes off track, or they do a mass shooting, then it's a mental issue, it's their mental health. That's the first thing that's jumped to. But if it's that same circumstance for a person of color, or specifically a Black person, then tapping into their mental health and their mental state is not something that's often looked at. And so it gives a profession, and it gives the work a negative outlook to people of color and to Black people as a whole. Because how can I take something serious? How can I believe in something when I say that, I have this situation, or this is my experience, and you don't feel listened to and you don't feel validated? But the person who flies off the hinges, then you're automatically going, let's do some testing. Let's look at, what we can do, and let's look at their trauma and the things that they're experiencing. And so I think that we definitely, like I say, we definitely have to stop weaponizing it. We definitely have to stop using it as a scapegoat, because then I think that it will open up the door and help decrease that stigma and normalize it so that people will utilize those services more often. That there's data out there, because a lot of times people think that, because it's expensive, Black people or people of color can't afford it. But there's plenty of data out there that shows that individuals that have the same income, that have the same type of insurance as non-people of color are still not using those services. And I think that's because of that huge stigma, because a lot of times as Black men, as people of color, we don't feel like we'd be listened to or heard to begin with.
Yes. I think you all said something that is getting at what the viewers are wanting to ask. You both asked, or you all said something that was related to what the viewers asked. So I'm going to ask these questions in a different order than I originally planned. To what Caleb had just mentioned about the stigma, there's a question here about there's a stigma with counseling and going to counseling. So can you talk to us about how you help your clients get over that stigma or overcome it? Ty?
Well, what I do is I take a dive head on into it. Honestly, normally I'm the first person to bring it up when meeting a new client, because I know that it's resting back there, waiting to become a barrier. To be totally honest, so I talk about the history of social work alone, chronologically, and the fact that there was a time it worked against people who look like us. It worked directly against us at some point. That's where it earned its reputation of being baby snatchers from. And I talk about some of what I would consider a youth, a sense of newness in the growth of the field, the inclusion of the field, and some of the positive impacts that have come about since then. The fact that there are more people who look like us in the field. It's a necessity to have Black males in this field, because there are young boys who are kind of experiencing childhood without the most appropriate role models in their lives. There are young girls, African-American girls, who are growing up lacking the same. Male figures who are going to have conversations with them that are more constructive to who they need to become, as opposed to more, contributing or pouring more into some of the negativity of learned behavior that we just so haphazardly pass along freely. So I have to talk about the fact that I know that the stigma is there, but I began to question, kind of meeting them where they are. I asked them, what are your thoughts about what therapy is? What did you expect coming into therapy? What have you heard? And so I find out where they are first, so that I have something I can speak directly to first before I merge in other needed information that maybe they weren't even thinking about, as it pertains to normalizing how useful and how helpful having these type of counseling and therapy services are. So that's kind of how I deal with it. I just face it head on.
What I'll add to that is I like to empower anyone that I'm speaking to about therapy and going to see a counselor, to let them know that this is your journey. You're behind the wheel. You're driving it. That you should ask for what you want, right? Ask for what you need. Figure out, what is your counselor's theoretical orientation? What's their framework? Where are they coming from, right? There are just some theories that I believe that just aren't conducive. You're going to go in and talk about race and what it means to be Black. There's some things that might go against that, or rather, there's things that might work a little better to help them address and see where you're coming from a little bit better, right? I always tell folks, figure out what your treatment plan is, right? So oftentimes, if you're going in and you're just talking with someone, and there's no treatment plan there, if they don't know how they're moving through the session, and if you can't see that, then maybe you should be asking those questions. So there's, again, empowering clients, anyone that's going to go see a therapist, to ask for X, ask for what you want, communicate what you want, let them know up front, this is what I'll need from you as a client, and as you being my therapist, this is what I need. This is what helps me. And if you don't know, maybe you explore a few different counselors, right? If you start with someone, that does not mean you have to stick with them. So yeah, that's what I'll add.
So I wholeheartedly agree with the other brothers. I would simply say that this is actually a big part of my job and my day-to-day job. When I see students who we recognize that some things are going on, we offer personal counseling to our students in our office, and our office students are able to get up to 8 sessions for free a semester. So if you think about it, that's being able to go 8 weeks. So that's like biweekly if they were, doing it outside of school. But with that being said, I always try to help them understand the therapeutic process. And because a lot of people think that you've got all these years of issues and that you're going to go in and you're going to sit down for this 1 hour and I'm going to tell you exactly what you need to do to fix your life. And then you're going to walk out healed and everything is going to be great. And so one of the things I try to do is just to really explain that therapeutic process and let them know what it would look like. I also use the example of the navigator when I explain the role of the therapist. I always let that student know or that client know that you're in the driver's seat. You are only going to cover and talk about what you want to cover. What that therapist is there for you, they're the navigator. They're there to help you explore, look at some thought patterns differently, present you and challenge you with maybe some potential options. But at the end of the day, you're in the driver's seat. And so you're either going to walk out that office and take those things and take those suggestions, or you're going to keep doing what you're doing. But I think it's just really important to explain that therapeutic process, because it helps normalize it and it helps put things in perspective and let them know that this is a process. You have to put in work. And this isn't something that's gonna happen in 1 session or even 2 sessions. It may be a semester's worth of work, or it may be a year's worth of work. But just let them know that process to give them some better understanding and to normalize it.
Sorry, I forgot I was on mute. So thank you very much for sharing that. Another thing that you all had talked about already, and I thought maybe you could expound upon just a little bit, is what are some of the unique struggles of intergenerational trauma related to racism versus trauma caused by a one-time incident like rape or abuse or something like that?
I would say the intergenerational trauma, it can be hard to penetrate. And so a lot of some of the progress of moving forward through it can be, whether or not there are barriers there, can be heavily influenced by the surrounding family itself. In my case, when I'm talking about dealing with children who are not, they're not the end all be all of, their guardianship or their consent. So I still have to go through an adult to really make sure that some conversations kind of stick. And so when we talk about intergenerational trauma, we're talking about competing against once a week, 45 minutes, give or take, and then their whole living environment for the rest of that time for an entire week, keeping this pattern going. So competing interests can be an issue when it comes to intergenerational trauma, because the fact that something can be normal for so long that the people from the inside looking out can't see what's wrong with it. And so when you're an external force trying to work against that, it's a marathon and not a sprint.
I'm going to leave it there. I think that's good. Thank you. Yeah.
I think it can be a little bit difficult in regards to, like you say, that's not something that you can always just pinpoint because it is trauma. And sometimes you recognize internally that something may not be right, but you may not be able to pinpoint what may not be right. And so it can take several sessions. It can take a lot of deep diving and a lot of deep digging to kind of figure that out, as opposed to as traumatic as something as rape can be, at least you would know that's what it is. Like, you're coming in the door saying, this was the problem. This is what happened to me, and I'm having an issue trying to overcome or deal with this particular problem. But when you're looking with that intergenerational trauma of racism, you don't necessarily know what may be a trigger all the time, or what may be a sore spot. And so, like I say, sometimes that takes a lot more of a deeper dive and a deeper dig internally to kind of figure out where those things are coming from.
Wow, thank you very much. Thank you very much. So as I shared earlier, there's been a lot of questions here, and we're going to try to get to them all. It looks like there's 3 more that need to be asked, and if you can try to keep your responses to 1 minute as much as possible. Can you talk a little bit about what it feels like to go through therapy? What should a person who's going through therapy expect?
Well, it definitely depends on the person and what your prior point of reference is. What to expect out of therapy? You should. Let me get away from the word should, but what's ideal to expect is someone who's unbiased, who's coming to help you unpack a bag and sort things out, help you further your understanding of yourself and some of the meaning or the source behind your decision making. You can expect someone who's looking to kind of step into your story. If you need a visual kind of example, I think it's pretty common for us all to have experience with Christmas story involving the ghost of Christmas past and such. And so imagine someone looking to walk with you through a filming of your past to help you point out some things that you may have overlooked that could contribute to how you express yourself, depending on what emotion you're experiencing. You can expect that. What it feels like trying to talk to a stranger about your most personal secrets, trying to walk into a room and just start talking, skipping small talk and getting straight to the most embarrassing, most uncomfortable, make your body temperature rise type of conversations. That's what it feels like at first, like kind of when you're walking through the door. But when it's happening the way it's supposed to happen, you kind of lose the fact that you had to guard up to begin with. You kind of forget that you even brought a shield into the room to ward some things off. You should be able to, hopefully, because like I said, it depends on the person and it depends on your frame of reference and what you even see it as already before you go into it. But ideally, it should be a safe place to truly speak freely. Sometimes for the first time in your life.
I think that I think Ty answered that question great, but I think it's really also just hard to say what you should expect, because for me, it's going to be so different for every client when you enter that room. I'll just reiterate that you should be asking for what you need. So I remember clients. I remember one client in particular. She said, "Do you mind if I lay on the floor?" Absolutely. Like, if you need to lay on the floor, that's fine, right? If you want to take a walk, we can walk and we can talk as well. right? So it doesn't always have to be confined to an office or that particular space. I mean, it's really about what you're comfortable with, and really just asking that person, right? Asking that therapist, that counselor, can we do it this way, right? And sometimes, again, this is why I've been sort of disillusioned with it. Some counselors, right? Because sometimes it's like, hey, this is my method, this is how I do it, it needs to be done this way, I do this with every client, and that doesn't work. And I've oftentimes seen that, that doesn't work when it comes to people of color, right? So, I have a friend who, every time a client comes in, it's draw a picture for me. Well, everybody doesn't want to draw a picture for you. That technique's not going to work. So again, if something feels uncomfortable, if they're moving a little too fast, slow them down, and hopefully you feel comfortable enough to say, hey, we need to take this a step slower. That's my ad.
So to not repeat anything that was great that was said, to add to it is I would say, strap up and be prepared for a ride. And what do I mean by that is that oftentimes going to therapy is the first step, and there's like a honeymoon phase and it feels all good and I'm going to therapy and I'm working on me. But when I say strap up, in that you're gonna be really doing, not to like Todd, not to use words like should or whatever, but in an ideal situation, you should be doing some super reflecting on yourself, on your situation in regards to what you may do different. And with that comes a range of emotions. And so we literally have what's called a disclosure statement that we have for our clients when we first start. And in my disclosure statement, I just literally let them know, like, yo, you may have an incredible experience leaving here, and you may learn some things about yourself and feel really good, and leave out of here feeling great. But there's also a chance that you may leave out of here feeling terrible and feeling trash. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just that we're tapping into some sensitive areas. We're tapping into some things that you've had closed off. And to get the progress and to be able to move forward in the way that you like to, we're going to have to address that big elephant in the room. We're not going to be able to come in here and have surface talk and everything is rainbows and unicorns. Obviously, you're in here. Obviously, there are some things that are troubling you. And so we might have to, tap into some of those skeletons in the closet. And so just be prepared that, there may be a session or a stretch or a time that may be a struggle, but in that same breath, as you are struggling going down, there are going to be ups, and there are going to be times where you're going to realize things about yourself and find resilience and find progress, and have those positive experiences as well.
Thank you very much. So we have two more questions, and one is, actually, we have two more questions that we're gonna ask. There's a third question I don't think we're gonna have time to get to, but the first question is, in a minute or so, you can respond. Do you feel more pressure to mentor other Black men and women to go further than they may see themselves in your counseling sessions? And the other thing someone wanted to know is, does that, if you do, does that stretch your counseling skills?
I would say from a firsthand experience, I definitely have had countless times where I felt that pressure of wanting to almost take my client by the hand and kind of lead them a little further, because they're just quite almost there, or they're giving up, just short of this little pivotal moment sometimes. So yeah, the pressure is there. However, if I'm not meeting them where they are, whatever I say is going to go through one ear and not the other, because they just are not quite ready to be available for that moment yet. There's still something that needs to be recognized within themselves to kind of get there. However, you can lead them from. It's kind of like when you look at employment hierarchies, when you lead up. You can lead them in a line of questioning. Socratic questioning, where we talk about just trying to guide them toward what their goals may be, so they can kind of see for themselves what they're doing to kind of impede that for themselves. So yeah, the pressure is there, and so there are strategies to kind of motivate them around it without leading them yourself.
You know, just to be brief, yeah, there's definitely that pressure there. You know, maybe it's not really a pressure, right? I think as a Black male, when it comes to my Black clients, like you want to help them get there, right? So it's that, but there's also the other sort of pressure, right? Just depending on the other sort of pressure, depending on, you know, where you work, who you work for, what sort of clients. Again, being in Iowa, there is not a lot of Black counselors here, right? So when we get one, then, you know, or when the agency gets one, rather, sometimes it's like, hey, do you want to go see Dr. Ferguson? Do you want to meet with him? Right? Or they'll just run into real life challenges where they need to come see me. And, you know, where when you're thinking about culturally, the white person that they're with just isn't providing the correct service, or again, ask for what you need. So different levels of pressure.
I would agree. I joke in that I say, you know, if I could put "I do it for the culture" on my wall in my office, I would. Because there is. I mean, sometimes you just see, you know, in my case, I work with students, so sometimes I'm just like, I know what you need. Like, you may not know the right questions to ask, but you know, I see, like, you know, like I've asked, you know, students before, like, yo, are you doing this on your own? Because I've had students that are like, well, the paper just said I need to come see you, and they just plop down, but they don't know what to ask or how to make the most out of that session, or whatever the case may be. And so it's, you know, sometimes you have to tap in, and you do got to do it for the, I mean, in my case, do it for the culture sometimes, and just, I know what you don't know what you don't need, but I know what you need. So let me tap in and make sure that you walk out of here straight.
Wow. Thank you very much. So for the last question of the evening, it focuses on you as Black men in the mental health profession. I know, I believe it was Anthony that said that you hadn't seen the George Floyd video for your own mental health, right? And I applaud you because it still traumatizes me when I think about it. Yeah, so I'm glad that you didn't see it and have that type of mental anguish that I have every time I think about it, which somewhat frustrates me, to be honest with you, just why we have to have these conversations. But anyway, before I go on a rampage about that, because that is not the question, but it's related to the question, is as Black men in the mental health profession, my sister actually wants to know, do you experience the same issues that other men experience? Sometimes when you are professionals in this type of profession, people may think that you don't have the same issues that other Black men have. You know, you don't, get scared when police are, driving behind you. You don't have some of the same issues and fears and thoughts. So can you talk through about your experiences with some of the common issues that Black men have?
Well, some of the issues that I have to face is the fact that I am who I was before I became a therapist still. And so I still have to walk in my shoes, and my shoes don't come with a uniform that stands out. You can't readily identify me the way you can a paramedic, firefighter, police officer. And so, I mean, for the most part, we blend into the crowd of everyone else until it's time to represent what we do for a living. But in our everyday lives, we suffer the same, we're on the same terrain. We're behind the same enemy lines. So we're in a position to have taught and have practiced how to cope with things, our experiences in a way, but we're not perfect. We have our moments where things can be too much for us, and it just so happens that we know we're a little closer or a little quicker to be tapped into and more open to going to where the help is needed. And so kind of a living example, leading by example. To be a therapist, you need a therapist. And so being that living example, but yeah, we face the same thing. I feel that same feeling in my diaphragm that you feel when you see those 4 lights in the rearview mirror. I feel the same emotional reaction when I see what I see in the media as well. And if anybody is Facebook friends with me, you've seen enough of what I've had to say in terms of dealing with oppression, dealing with race issues, dealing with being Black in America. So it's a hell of a task. Some days are better than others, but I make it a point to make sure that I can share the lessons learned, whether directly or indirectly, to people who are not quite in a position to face them yet, but they can be prepared to when they finally, because they will finally have their moment.
You know, the short answer is yes. We my sure, you know, we face all of the same things, and to be honest, I worry the most about my counselor friends, and especially my Black counselor friends. We take a lot on, and I think the daunting task of being a Black counselor, being a counselor in general, is we've studied the tools and the resources that will help someone get better, that could help us get better. That doesn't always mean we utilize those things. I'm probably the biggest fan and advocate of self-talk. So when sadness and depression, it's like, get up, you know, count to 5, you know, all of that. Like it might seem simple, and I might do these techniques with clients, but also I'm doing it with myself. And sometimes I can be stubborn. And sometimes like, screw 5, let's go to 10, you know, maybe we're going to 15 a day. We face all of the same challenges, and definitely trying to address them can be challenging in itself as well.
Again, a simple yes, in agreement. And to piggyback off of what Ty said is that, you know, when I walk out this door, unfortunately, you know, accolades, degrees, professions, that's not what's seen. I'm seen as a Black man, a larger Black man at that. And so go ahead and insert, you know, whatever bias and stereotypes. That's just what's going to pop off first. You know, even in the workplace, I've gone into offices, and I'm faculty, and I've been, well, who are you? And and it's like, no, I work here. Like I'm in this office, and so we still face that. I know, in the spirit of being honest, definitely oftentimes get second guessed in regards to, even though I've gone to school and I have the degrees and I've been working for X amount of years, you get the microaggressions of, well, you may not know this, or do you know this, or are you sure about this? You know, almost like a quiz to see if I, you know how to do my job. And so those things just come with it. And unfortunately, you know, you push through, you fight your battles. Sometimes you take it with a grain of salt. Sometimes you have to, you know, let them know who you are. But you just got to pick your battles at times.
All right, thank you very much. Because we are Black men, I always like to do disclaimers all the time, especially when people say things that others may view as being hostile or violent or aggressive. but so what Caleb was trying to say at the end is actually having a conversation with them and being very direct in your approach instead of walking around the issue. So, Caleb, would that be a great synopsis of what you were just?
That's what I meant.
Yeah, thank you. I like to do that because we get misunderstood,
Right.
miscategorized all the time by our actions, and they want to try to make us aggressive and make us criminals just by the way we express ourselves. And I just because as an academic on race and culture, I just feel that that's important for me to do, to continue to help educate people that we speak a different language, but we do not come in anything but peace. So we come in peace, but you may take what I'm saying differently than that. So I just want to always try to translate that. I'm a big, I definitely have faced some of the same things as you are. Again, my degree is in race and culture and education, and someone tried to white-splain to me what racism was, and I was like, I have a whole degree in it. I'm sorry. And it's more than what you just said, actually. Yeah. How do you know? PhD on the wall? Yeah. Okay, so, but yeah, so I definitely understand that. But I want to just take this time to thank each and every one of you for participating in this discussion today. We had by far the most viewer interaction and engagement in this panel. We received 8 different questions. We weren't able to ask all of them. So, after this session, I believe that they will still be up there. If either one of you want to go through and answer any of the questions that we were not able to get to, feel free to do that. Before we go, I want to give you an opportunity to share with people, how can they get in touch with you on social media if they wanted to? So go in the same order if we wanted to, Ty.
A little skeptical about this answer, but if you wanted to get in contact with me via social media, social media it can be like peeking into hell sometimes. So find me on your friends list. I am just one mutual friend away for the most part. But you can look me up as Popular Stranger, but every vowel has those 2 dots, and I'm not a English or literary specialist. So whatever you know those names to be, one on every letter. That's how you find me. Every vowel. Popular Stranger.
For me, you can find me on Facebook under Tony Ferg, and Twitter and Instagram is also Tony_Ferg, FERG.
So on Facebook, I'm Caleb Boswell. Also on Facebook, you can find us at The Healing Collective. That's our group on there. And then on Instagram, I'm Talented10th06.
That's right. And also, please don't go to any of these people thinking that your Facebook inbox message is a replacement for counseling. So
No.
It is not. It is not. So I think they all will be interested in maybe helping you find resources so you can get the appropriate counseling that you need. But counseling will not happen through an inbox or a DM. So I just want to make sure I say that as a disclaimer. I don't know why I felt the need to, but
no, that's real. That's real.
I just think that we do too much, through the DM and through the inbox that we try to make official, but it's not really that official. So especially when it comes to your mental health, you really need to set aside time. Again, I think Caleb said, you need to ask what's your plan of maybe it was Dr. Ferguson. What is your plan of, I'm in the academic world. I'm thinking of plan to study, but I know that's not what you said.
Your treatment plan?
Yeah, treatment plan. Thank you. Yes, yes. I can get out the academic world sometimes. So So yeah, what's your treatment plan? So you really want to have that treatment plan come and have that conversation with your own counselor. But I want to thank each and every one of you for being here. Just from the interaction with the viewers, I believe that it was a much needed conversation. And I'll say this, I don't know many Black male mental health professionals. And I'm just honored to be in acquaintance with each of you, and that you were willing to come on today and be a part of something that I find important. And this platform is Perspectives with Black Men. We are currently in a race and racism series, a 10-part series here. And we are at part 5, mental health. And we have some great experts and therapists who are working in the field talk with us today. And the Perspectives with Black Men, we focus on giving our voices, our experiences, and our solutions to everyday problems. And that's our tagline. You'll see that in the back of me right here, if you want to look at that. But that is basically our mission for the show. Next, we will honor our fathers, actually. We will honor our fathers, and we will get wisdom from our elders on Wednesday at 8:30 p.m. We have a special show for you in honor of Father's Day coming up. We wanted to give you an opportunity to hear from some fathers around how they have potentially have Black male boys and how they deal with supporting them through all of these things that are going on in society, as well as how they deal with it as fathers, and just getting some wisdom from our elders. So we'll have Terrence Shelton here with us from Akron, Ohio. He works for the Project Ujima, which is a great organization here in Akron. We'll also have with us Jay Young out of Toledo, as well as Ardell Ricks from Chicago. And we have one more person that I am blanking on that person right now. I don't know why I'm blanking on them. But yeah, I don't know why I'm blanking on them. But we have 4 individuals with us on Wednesday. So come check us out. 8:30 p.m. Right here, the same back channel, same back time. And I just want to say I appreciate everyone for joining us today. And thank you again to our panelists for being here. Everyone have a great rest of their Sunday and have a great week.
Thanks for having us.
Yes, no problem. No problem. One of my favorite people on social media, Tabitha Brown, says, if you're not going to have a good day, don't go around ruining someone else's. So please make sure you. I love it. I love her. I listen to her every day. She is awesome. So I just wanted to say that. So shout out to Tabitha Brown. If she ever watches this, she knows that I quoted her.
That.
All right, well, y'all have a great day. And tell your wife Morgan I said hello.
All right, have a good one. Thank you.
It was a pleasure and an honor.
Yes.